We've already given you some of our must have players, guys that you need to draft at least once. But what about those late round picks, the sleepers, right? Those guys who could pay off huge in the late rounds. Well, here we go. Here are our must have sleepers. All right, why not start big? Let's go with a rookie running back in New York.
Yes, I am back in on Cam Scattaboo, baby, because Cam Scattaboo is back at practice. So, like, all the worry about the hamstring seems to be alleviated. Now, I will say he's not, fully running in practice yet, but the fact that he's back is a good sign. And I'll also say I do still think Tyrone Tracy has the inside track to the starting job to start the season. But I really like Cam Scattaboo. It sounded like before that hamstring injury, he was kind of being viewed more as the goal line back and maybe even the pass catching back. It makes a lot of sense for this guy to be the goal line back. He's 219 pounds, got a 31 BMI, but he also had an absurd 95th percentile college target share. So it's not like he's just a big bruiser. He can also catch the football. Also, when you look at it last year, a 94th percentile college dominator rating on his way to over 2,300 all-purpose yards. He's got elite contact balance. He broke over 100 tackles last season. And like I said, he has an exceptional hands for a big man. Now, with all that said, Cam Scattaboo is not a perfect prospect. I'm not trying to make it to sound like this guy is the next, Saquon Barkley, Bijan Robinson, Derrick Henry, or anything like that. But he's a very good football player. But he does, of course, lack that long home run speed. That's going to hold him back a little bit. But you know who else lacks that home run speed coming in the draft last year? Bucky Irving. You know who else lacks that home run speed but is one of the most productive backs in the NFL? David Montgomery, and I can go on and on. There have been plenty of backs who don't have home run speed that are still worth having in fantasy, still very valuable in fantasy. So Cam Scattaboo, no, he's not going to be like the next Jahmyr Gibbs, Devon Achane, ripping off long runs. But I think he's going to be one of those guys, like I think Montgomery is the perfect comp here. A guy who's a solid running back for your fantasy team, who can score touchdowns, catch enough passes to give you value even in your PPR leagues. And again, even if Tracy is the guy to start the season, which I think it is, I still believe that Scattaboo is just a better running back than Tracy is. And I think he'll eventually take over this backfield. Maybe not completely the way Bucky Irving did last year, but at least enough to where this could be at least a split here. And if he's getting the touchdowns in a split and still catching passes, this guy's going to have a lot of value. And because he, a lot of people think or say like, oh, he's not a good prospect or he wasn't out there practicing. His ADP has just kind of been hovering around in the hundreds, and I think that's too low for a guy who could potentially be a solid RB2 this year. I've been drafting a ton of Scattaboo. I haven't stopped drafting Scattaboo. I'm not going to stop drafting Scattaboo. I think he's a must-have sleeper in 2025.
All right, well, I'm going to go with another running back in New York. No, not Tyrone Tracy, although I actually do still like him. Let's go to the Jets. Braylon Allen starting to pick up steam as a sleeper. I see a lot of other analysts on top of this. And they're right, right? There's a good reason here. No, it's not because I think Breece Hall is in the doghouse or is going to get traded and all that stuff. Breece Hall is still the lead back. And so you're like, well, why would I want the backup running back, right? Or the 1B in an offense? That's why he's a late round sleeper, okay? But here's the thing. This isn't just a handcuff, a backup. I think Braylon Allen is legitimately going to be the 1B. And all the talk now is, well, is this going to be like a Gibbs Monty situation? Yes. Yes, it is. This is exactly what's happening. And that's exactly why you got to buy into Braylon Allen. Look, new head coach, Aaron Glenn, came from Detroit. His offensive coordinator is somebody he picked from the staff, an assistant there from Detroit, Tanner Engstrand. They have already said, they have spoken this into existence. It's going to happen. They want a Gibbs Monty situation. And I don't think it's necessarily because they got anything against Breece Hall or they don't have confidence in him. They just now are with the modern NFL system that says you don't just run one running back into the ground. You use two guys who have different, maybe complementary skill sets. And we know what Braylon Allen's skill is. He is a big bruiser. He weighs 240 pounds. This guy is a load, very different from Breece Hall. He's more of a speedster. And Braylon Allen, his limitation is that, yeah, he's not going to have a big pass catching role. I understand that. But again, late round sleeper, not a guy you're drafting in the first round. But if he's even just the 1B here in this situation, just think about in Detroit, David Montgomery, each of the last two seasons in Detroit, has had almost 200 carries, and that's with missing 3 games each of those seasons. That's an average of 200 carries. Any running back that's going to get you that many touches is valuable in fantasy just through sheer volume alone. And you know who the goal line back is going to be between Braylon Allen and Breece Hall? it's going to be Braylon Allen. And this, let's face it, is going to be more of a run heavy offense. Justin Fields running the show. I mean, he is competent as a passer, but let's not kid ourselves with a more mobile quarterback here with a pretty suspect wide receiver depth chart behind Garrett Wilson. There's no way that they're leading with the pass, right? They're going to use Braylon Allen a lot. And while you might be worried also last year, he didn't look that great, honestly. 3.6 yards per carry. That's not good, but let's face it, first of all, this is a very, very young player. Remember, he came into the league as one of the youngest players in the entire NFL. He's still only 21 years old. He will get better. And this offensive line got younger. They are now, according to PFF, a top 10 O line. So I think they'll just be more effective running the ball, especially with Fields behind center. Now, a fair question to ask is, who's the running back to own in Cleveland?
I think it might be Dylan Sampson. Sampson was a guy I really liked as a prospect, kind of like in the tier 2 prospects, not the top tier prospects this year for running backs, but like in that next tier. Then, of course, he went to Cleveland after they had already drafted Quinshon Judkins, and it was like, well, there goes that. But where are we at right now with Quinshon Judkins? Well, we know his case has been dropped, but still doesn't sound like he's anywhere close to signing the contract. And even when he does sign the contract, this guy has had exactly as many days in training camp as you and I have had this season. So there's no clear timeline here for Judkins, not to mention he could still be facing a suspension. Dylan Sampson, for early in camp, wasn't getting run with the ones, and I was like, maybe he's just not that guy. But as we've gone on, he's getting more and more run with the ones, and for whatever reason, the Browns just don't seem to trust or like or want to commit to Jerome Ford. No matter who they have at running back, they find a way to bring somebody else in to replace Jerome Ford. So I really think Dylan Sampson is going to be the guy that you're going to want in this backfield long term this year. Now, I do also have to say, this isn't a backfield I love. It's the Cleveland Browns. I talked about it if you watched my bus video where I talked about Judkins way before any of this legal stuff. I said, this is probably going to be one of the worst offenses, negative game script, not good for Judkins. But at least Sampson has that pass catching ability, which could keep him afloat. But he's also a great runner between the tackles. I mean, look, last year, 1,500 yards playing in the SEC, scored 20 touchdowns. And despite the fact that he ran a slow 40 at the combine, if you watch this guy on film, you see home run speed. So sometimes these guys just don't run fast during the testing, but they have that game speed. He's got the game speed. He's also got great patience and vision behind the line. And look, that's an underrated thing. You don't really hear many analysts or fantasy players saying like, oh, he's got great vision. But this is like a very important thing for running backs. We see many running backs who are great athletes, can't find the hole, and they're no good. You got to be able to find the hole. He's got it. So I do think Sampson is going to be the RB1 in this backfield, the guy you're going to want in this backfield. Again, this isn't a backfield that makes me like really want the RB1. But if you're getting the RB1 in any NFL offense well outside the top 100 picks, like you said with Braylon Allen, if the touches are there, the value is going to be there. And unlike Judkins, he can catch passes. He is more of a pass catcher. So even if they're behind, he'll catch passes. I do worry Flacco may not dump it off enough. But still, getting the RB1 in an offense well outside the top 100 picks, you can't ever really go wrong with that strategy. Do you want to play in fun fantasy leagues with Pierre and myself that have unique features you can't find anywhere else that absolutely 10x the fantasy football experience? Well, now you can. Just go to your App Store or the Google Play Store and download our app, DraftLane. Create a free account in seconds and then head to draftlane.com/play to join a free league today and experience the future of fantasy football right now.
All right, so I pegged Braylon Allen as maybe this year's Monty. All right, so the big question people have been asking all offseason, who's going to be this year's Bucky Irving? Well, I hate to disappoint you if you're expecting a rookie, but I actually think it's going to be third-year running back Tank Bigsby. Now, I got to get ahead of this before you even think it. You probably already have. This seems pretty lazy, right? Oh, well, Liam Cohen came from Tampa. He's going to Jacksonville, so we have to make that comparison, right? He's going to find his Bucky Irving. Yes, that's exactly what's going to happen. Guys, don't overthink it. That's exactly what happens. Coaches have philosophies. Coaches are able to implement systems that they want and use guys that they see that will fit what they're looking for. Yes, this is going to happen, all right? He's going to have a lead back. He's going to have a pass catching back. And I know a lot of people are trying to talk themselves into Blayshall Tootin. Look, I don't mind taking a shot late on Tootin in case he does carve out a role, but that is only going to happen, possibly late in the season, which means why would you draft him? You could just pick him up off waivers because he'll be worthless for the first several weeks. And B, if maybe there's an injury then you could consider taking him early. But look, Tank Bigsby was already the lead running back last year. Why would he not be the lead running back this year? He had more carries than Travis Etienne. Blashal Tootin, look, he's one of these late round rookies. Let's face it. Sure, he's talented. They're all talented. Most of these guys just don't make themselves a role in the NFL. They just don't. It's possible, but I think people are just trying to convince themselves that he's the guy who's this year's buggy just because he's a rookie. But Tank Bigsby last year was awfully good, and in fact, it's kind of misleading too because he was averaging 5.5 yards per carry up until week 10, and then he had a re-aggravation of an ankle injury. He missed a game, and after that, it wasn't the same, just not as effective. And let's face it, the Jags, the way they ended last season, nobody was really effective other than Brian Thomas Jr. You know what we heard from the coaching staff and the beat reporters this offseason and training camp? Tank Bigsby is the guy who's got that job. Travis Etienne will have a role on third downs, but it's not like Tank won't catch passes either. We've seen him do it in the preseason already. And Tank Bigsby is a guy who can rip off big runs, right? Despite the name, he's not just a big bruiser. He's a guy who actually runs a lot like Kenneth Walker. In fact, look at the stats. Last year, there were exactly 2 running backs that had over 150 carries, and 70% or more of their yards came after contact. It was Kenneth Walker and Tank Bigsby. And this guy does not go down easily. He can break tackles. He's really good at it. And he will be the lead back for this Jags offense, which should definitely be improved this year. All right, it's time to give the receivers some love here. All right, who's your first pick?
My first pick is the wide receiver 2 for the Texans. And if your mind instantly went to Jaden Higgins, well, you haven't really been paying attention. Because the wide receiver 2 is going to be Christian Kirk. And I don't just mean he's going to be the slot wide receiver. I mean, he's going to be the wide receiver too, because everything we're hearing is that Christian Kirk is going to be out there, not just in the slot on 3 wide receiver sets, but he's going to be out there a lot in 2 wide receiver sets as well. And speaking of Jaden Higgins, it doesn't even sound like he's ahead of Xavier Hutchinson right now. I really think Christian Kirk and Nico Collins are going to be the top 2 targets in this offense, which, is weird. We get this rookie fever, but then it ends up being the vets who are the guys you want. Christian Kirk is going to be in that Stefon Diggs flanker role that he had last year. You look at it last year, Diggs played 45% of his snaps from the slot, and he averaged over 15 points per game prior to his ACL injury. And it's not like Christian Kirk is a bad player. Christian Kirk is just a player who can't stay on the field. And look, maybe he gets hurt again this year, but it's okay. He's one of your double-digit round picks. If he gives you 10, 11 weeks, 8 weeks of high-end production like he got from Stefon Diggs last year, you'll take it. And the last time we saw this guy healthy just a few years ago in Jacksonville, he had over 1,100 yards and 8 touchdowns and averaged over 14 points per game. Also, the Texans are one of the pass-heaviest teams. They've ranked 12th and 11 in pass attempts per game the last 2 years, and they've also been 4th in expected fantasy points for wide receivers over the last 2 years. So Nico Collins can have a monster season, and Christian Kirk could still be very good. And honestly, this year, they might throw it even more than they have the last 2 years because lead back Joe Mixon dealing with some mysterious foot injury that we have no idea how healthy he is or if he's even going to be ready to start the season, which is basically leaving Nick Chubb, who's 30 years old, coming off 2 major injuries, Dameon Pierce, and Woody Marks as the running backs here. They may not be able to run the ball, especially since they have one of the worst offensive lines in the NFL. And speaking of that bad offensive line, that usually means quicker throws. Quicker throws means shorter routes. That's where Christian Kirk thrives. So I really think Christian Kirk is going to be similarly as good as Stefon Diggs was to start the last year. Remember, Stefon Diggs was like a solid wide receiver 2 every week of the season last year before ACL. Why can't Christian Kirk do that in this offense this year as the Texans' number 2 wide receiver?
Well, let's go with another injury discount special. Some of you may remember early last season, Rashid Shaheed was kind of on fire, right? He was picked up everywhere. Nobody really thought about him. I don't think he was really drafted hardly anywhere last season. And then all of a sudden, this guy was having big game after big game. In 4 of the first 6 games last year, he went over 70 yards, and he had 3 touchdowns in those first 6 games. And then his season came to an end due to injury, knee injury, unfortunately. And so this is worrisome because, ACLs and MCLs and PCLs and all those CLs are kind of important for a NFL player, especially a speedy receiver. But guess what? He looks fine. He has rehabbed strong. In fact, they say he added 10 pounds of muscle and he's trying to make himself stronger. So he isn't just this kind of little speedy receiver. He can also make some contested catches, be stronger across the middle. look, everything we have heard from the Saints beat reporters is saying that this guy looks better than he did last year. Now, why is he being taken so late? We already know this. He's on the Saints. And I think everybody, ourselves included, just to be honest, we expect the Saints to have the worst offense in the NFL because we don't even know who the quarterback is. And even if we did know who they named as their starting quarterback, it really wouldn't matter because it wouldn't make you feel much better, anyways. Okay. I get that. That's a concern. But then I think about it, is it really different from last year? I mean, they had Derek Carr for a little bit. He was good enough that they got rid of him, and he retired. Spencer Rattler, Tyler Shook, really, are these guys going to be really worse than whatever he was dealing with last year? I don't think so. And look, somebody is going to be able to chuck the ball deep, and Rashid Shaheed can run by the secondary and make some big plays. That's what you're looking for, some upside with these late round flyers. And Shaheed, we know he can do this. He's done it before. There's never been good quarterback play for the Saints. And if anything, this team is probably going to have to pass the ball a lot more than they even want to. And if you buy that Kellen Moore is an offensive guru or at least a very good offensive coach, then you know that he'll probably get his receivers fed enough. He likes to throw to the wideouts. He doesn't like to do a lot of this dink and dunk stuff. And so I feel like Shaheed is going to get enough targets to be valuable. And at the very least, he will make the most of those targets. Well, let's keep going with that theme. Obviously, these late round picks, because they're not on these elite offenses, but that doesn't mean there isn't value.
Right, and sometimes we see these offenses we think, oh, they're not going to be very good, actually end up being pretty good. I think that could be the Patriots this year. Now, I don't think the Patriots are going to be a monster offense, but I think they'll at least be good enough, and I really like Demario Douglas this year. Now, don't get me wrong. I think Stephon Diggs is going to be the guy you want in this offense as far as receivers go. I think he's going to be the number one target. But I think Demario Douglas is going to be the number two target. All the reports out of camp is that he looks like the best wide receiver in camp. Again, still think Diggs is the one you want, but it makes me feel good about Douglas. And sure, he hasn't put up any great seasons yet, but last year he was only on the field for 70% or more of the snaps in 5 games. But in those 5 games, he scored double-digit fantasy points in all but one, and he had 14 or more points twice. The reason he wasn't on the field last year is because OC Alex Van Pelt, who's no longer there, hardly ran 3 wide receiver sets. They ran 3 wide receiver sets at the 24th lowest rate in the NFL. And being a slot guy, that means he wasn't out there very much. But now we got Josh McDaniels. And if there's one thing we can associate Josh McDaniels with, it's slot wide receivers. I think we're going to see Demario Douglas out there, even in 2 wide receiver sets, playing out of the slot. Think back to the Patriots, Wes Welker, Danny Amendola, Julian Edelman. I mean, slot merchants, right? That were great players. Now, I know they had Tom Brady, but look, I don't think Drake May's a slouch. I think Drake May can get it done. And Pop Douglas actually is a good player. Last year, he ranked 9th in route win rate and 2nd in win rate versus man. Now he enters year 3, which, look, we've seen other wide receivers take 3 years to finally break out and have a nice season. Jameson Williams last year, Nico Collins a couple years ago. It would not be out of the question for Demario Douglas to have 800 to 1,000 yards, 5+ touchdowns this year. And look, those aren't like crazy numbers. You're not going to look back and be like, well, he went nuts. But as a guy you're picking, like literally with your last pick, you'll take that every day. I think that's what we're going to get from Demario Douglas in this Josh McDaniels offense with Drake May running out of the slot. I think it's perfect for him. I think he's ready to finally have that 3rd year breakout. Not a huge breakout, but a good enough breakout, especially when he's going so late as a sleeper in your fantasy drafts.
All right, well, here's a player who's on what should be still an elite offense, the Kansas City Chiefs. I'm actually shocked that Jalen Royals is not getting more attention. He's a rookie wide receiver. We love the rookies, and he's on the Chiefs. I mean, normally we'd go crazy for a player like this, but I don't know. For some reason, he's kind of going under the radar, and for some reason, people are still wanting to spend an early pick on Rashee Rice when we know he's getting suspended for like half the season, probably during the fantasy playoffs. All right, but before I get to that, talk about Royals. I mean, a lot of analysts said he's basically the steal of the draft. He fell for a couple of reasons. First of all, limited time last season in college because of an ankle injury. And let's face it, he played for Utah State. Not going to get nearly as much attention as some of those other college players. But this guy checks all the boxes, got ideal size. He performed pretty well. He ran like a 4.4 something, but he really is more like a 4.3 speed type of player because he said he wasn't even 100% when he tested. And yet he also still finished tied for first in the 10-yard splits. This guy can do it all in terms of speed and athleticism, right? So there's no concern there. But what's his role, right? And then we say all the time the Chiefs, they do spread the ball around, right? I mean, this is true. They do. And Royals is not going to step up and just necessarily be the next Rishi Rice. But Rishi Rice is going to miss a good chunk of the season. It's going to happen. I've been drafting a lot of Hollywood Brown. I know you have too, Chris, late because you can get him around this range. Hollywood Brown is still banged up again. I think this guy, honestly, is starting to worry me if he can ever stay healthy. And I think Royals could carve out a role for himself, maybe not early in the season, but if he impresses, they will use him. The Chiefs are not afraid to roll out anybody who's going to be able to catch passes from Pat Mahomes. And if he gets that trust, yeah, he's going to break through. And let's not forget, even though we feel like it was kind of a disappointing season for the Chiefs, they will still lead with the pass. Last year, sixth most pass attempts out of any offense. I mean, Royals has the talent. He could have a great opportunity. So I'm kind of baffled that he's basically free in the last round of your draft. So I'll just keep taking him. All right, now this one I think still qualifies as a sleeper, although if you're on social media enough, then the hype is just getting a little out of hand, isn't it?
It is, but I think we do have to talk about Bill. And if you don't know who I mean by Bill, we're talking about Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt, the rookie running back for the Washington Commanders. It goes by Bill because he looked like a character on some Bill Cosby cartoon, I guess. But anyways, yes, he's starting to get a lot of hype here, but I think he is still a sleeper in your fantasy drafts because he still goes well outside the top 100 picks. In fact, he usually goes around pick 100. Although I do worry that Bill, JCM, is starting to jump the shark here because it's like people have just completely forgotten that Austin Eckler is still there, Chris Rodriguez is still there, and the Commanders actually like these guys. And while it seems pretty obvious Brian Robinson Jr. is not going to be there this year, whether it's through a trade or through getting cut, that doesn't necessarily mean that JCM is instantly the RB1 in this backfield. Now, with that said, JCM is still the guy I want to draft out of this backfield because I think he has the most upside of anybody in this backfield. This is a guy who, yes, he fell to the 7th round in the NFL draft, but he didn't fall to the 7th round because of talent. He fell because he lost his eligibility the last year out of some technicality based on his jersey as a freshman. But you look at it among FBS running backs that had at least 200 carries since 2014, he was in the 95th percentile in after contact rate, the 98th percentile in missed tackle rate, and the 97th percentile in breakaway run rate. So it's not like this guy's a slouch. He can actually play. He can be good. Now, again, I do want to say, because I know there's a lot of videos and articles about this guy right now, and a lot of people saying, like, this guy's going to win leagues. He's going to be a league winner. I think we need to pump the brakes a little bit here. Like, even if Brian Robinson is gone, Chris Rodriguez is going to be involved. Austin Eckler is going to be involved. But again, we're talking about late round sleepers. We're shooting for upside. I think he's the guy that potentially gives us the most upside. And this is an offense that's a very fantasy friendly offense, a very friendly offense for running backs. So I think even if he's not the clear RB1 here, there's enough for anybody getting significant touches in this backfield. He's got the talent. He's in a good situation. I think he's a guy you have to take a chance on in the double-digit rounds. Look, Pierre, you were telling me before the video, you did a Yahoo draft, and you got him with like your last pick. Like nobody took him, so he's still going under the radar for now at least. I don't know if that'll continue, but for now he is. Make sure he's on your team.
Well, my last sleeper is a guy I don't really think anybody's talking about, to be honest. It's a tight end that is not being drafted, but here we go. Another Carolina Panther. Yeah, I'm big on this offense. I think JT Sanders could have a nice year. And if you wait on tight end, which is never a bad idea, take him with your last pick and he could start for you right away. Now, Sanders is a guy who, coming out of UT, he is one of these prototypical receiving first tight ends. He's not out there just to block. He's there to run routes and to be a part of this offense. Yes, I'm big on the Dave Canales offense. Remember, a couple years ago as well, Cade Otton had his best year, probably his only real good year, when Baker Mayfield broke out. And so JT Sanders is better, arguably, than Cade Otton as far as receiver and athleticism and all that. Now, you didn't see him kind of step up last year when Bryce Young started to step up because of injury. And this is why he's being overlooked. You might remember, so last year, he was kind of getting there. He was making a dent in the offense. In week 9, he had 87 yards. The next week, he had his first NFL touchdown. After that, it was, 3 for 49. But then the following week, he had one of those scary moments, landed on his head, had a neck injury. He was actually taken to the hospital. Thankfully, everything was good, right? There's no long-term effects here, but he missed some time, and then coming back, they were just very cautious with him. Understandably so. So we didn't see him out there as much, right? And this kind of derailed his chance to have that connection with Bryce Young. So finally, now we'll get to see at the beginning of this season what these two can do together. And everything we've heard out of Carolina is that basically Sanders was considered the star of training camp. I mean, he really stood out. You know, Ted McMillan will be the leading receiver there. He's going to have a great season, but can't forget about a guy like Sanders. And yes, Bryce Young does like to throw to the slot. I'm sure Adam Thielen will still get his, but he also will be looking to the tight end. I really think Sanders is going to be one of these sneaky late tight end picks that you wind up being thankful for. You can pluck him off of waivers. It's kind of a crime that not only is he being undrafted, he's the fourth Sanders being drafted even after the kicker, Jason Sanders. We can't let that happen. All right, if you missed our other must have video or anything else we put out so far this preseason to help you dominate your draft, check out this playlist.